So what do you associate with the number 9 in football? A goal-getter, a prolific poacher that's going to hopefully carry your side to your dreams and aspirations. Or if you're a Chelsea fan, you associate it with pain. For some unknown reason, in the Premier League era, not one prolific striker can go to SW6 and make it out alive. Mateja Kezman, Hernan Crespo, Fernando Torres, Gonzalo Higuain, Romelu Lukaku. Just some of the names coming off the back of Chelsea's greatest spell with number 9s, like Gianluca Vialli and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. 20 years on and the shirt hasn't replaced Jimmy. It begs the question, is the Chelsea number 9 shirt cursed? It's genuinely ridiculous, insane, wild that a club that has enjoyed so much success under Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich has not had a prolific number 9 since he's taken over the club. And that's not to say that all of their strikers have been duds, you know, the likes of Isaac Johnson, Diego Costa, and of course the legendary Didier Drogba, but none of them donning that famous number 9 kit. In June of 2003, and Roman Abramovich buys Chelsea, it would result in a golden era of 18 trophies won, including 5 Premier Leagues and 2 Champions Leagues, but would also alter the landscape of English football. Ultimately, Chelsea were accused of warping the British market with club record signings like Andrei Shevchenko. Either way, Roman's spending on strikers started immediately, and with an instant impact.
This is what he does!
Yeah, Adrian Mutu was banned. Having realised that breaking through the lines was more effective for a striker than snorting them, Roman learned from his experience and signed his first Chelsea number 9. Mateja was a Serbian whose early career was disrupted by the war and breakup of Yugoslavia, and he found himself making a name for himself over in PSV in the Eredivisie. He joined age 21 and in his first season was the league's top scorer with 24 goals in 33. He'd score 105 goals in total in 122 games, a really strong record for a PSV side and a pretty strong Eredivisie back then, following on in the footsteps of a young R9. He'd even built a serious partnership with a footballing icon, becoming the Batman to Iron's Robin. He was a poacher and a robot in the area. Honestly, provide this guy with any sort of chance, any type of goal, and he's scoring it. A move to Chelsea would be exciting for Blues fans, but upon arrival, the guy could barely keep his balance. The wait for his first goal was agonising. His first Premier League goal came in December, but his side were already 3-0 up. He'd end the season with 7-41, which was nowhere near his Dutch record, and simply wouldn't recover, even though he did score a vital goal in the League Cup final. At the end of the year, Jose Mourinho shoveled him off to Atletico Madrid, and that was the end of the Serb. Next up, another man with a big reputation upon arrival, Hernan Crespo. The Argentinian, having been electric in Serie A, scoring 62 in 116 for Parma and 39 in 54 for Lazio, actually joined Chelsea in 2003, before Kezman. No, the reason why he wasn't a Chelsea number 9 originally was because that was taken. His first season in the 21 shirt was alright, but then he was loaned back to AC Milan for 04-05, where he would score 2 goals in that Istanbul final.
Against all odds, have won the Champions League.
The 1999 UEFA Cup winner, 99-2000 top scorer in a stacked Serie A, and world record transfer signing with his move to Lazio, arrived back at Stamford Bridge with one of the biggest reputations that a striker could have. He'd had a number of small injuries both at Lazio and at Inter, and he was only actually given the number 9 shirt because that was a promise Jose Mourinho had to make to him to get him to stay at the club, because he failed to sign a striker that he actually wanted. His second spell started with a screamer against Wigan. He grabbed important late goals against Liverpool and West Ham and did help Chelsea to a second Premier League title. I'll be honest, he was alright. He wasn't a complete flop, and as I mentioned, scored some vital goals, but having been one of the most complete strikers of his entire generation, he probably didn't quite live up to Chelsea's expectations. Now this is where things start to get a little bit mad, because Chelsea's next number 9 would be a centre-back.
Bang, see you later, you go in prison. You go in prison.
Yeah, no, this is a crime. I don't know who did this, and I hope I don't sound like I'm overreacting, but I want them sent to Guantanamo Bay. Khalid Boularus, a Dutch centre-back, was the next person to take on the cursed shirt, signed by Jose Mourinho as something of a backup. For some reason, all shirt numbers that were like lower than 30 were taken before the season started, except for number 9, so the kit man just gave him that instead. He'd start well, but would fall down the pecking order and make 13 Premier League appearances in total, and after all of it, it turned out that the number 2 shirt was available, but he didn't choose it. And for that, Khalid, you can never be forgiven. But look, at least it can't get any worse. Fucking hell, man. Fuck knows how this happened, but Chelsea's next number 9 would be central midfielder Steve Sidwell. Steve Sidwell gets kind of mean for this, but in reality, he was a pretty highly rated young player at the time. Well, he was 25, but we don't. After 2 pretty solid loan spells, Arsenal would let Steve head over to Reading. The Championship side would be constantly fighting for promotion. He was consistently voted the best player outside of the Premier League by the PFA, would get Reading promoted, and then would help them to an 8th place finish in their first season in the league. He deserved to be at a better club. Chelsea was probably that's a stretch. But like if someone like an Everton or a Tottenham had come in for him, I think he really would have found himself at home. He didn't really get much of a chance for Chelsea, and after 15 Premier League appearances, he was sold to Aston Villa in the 2007-08 season, leaving the number 9 shirt vacant again, ready to be filled by another household name.
I don't know who this man is.
Oh, lads. Oh. The year's now 2008, and Chelsea have picked themselves up a young, highly rated Argentinian wonder kid by the name of Franco Di Santo for just over £3 million. He's being compared to the greats in his homeland, even labelled the next Diego Maradona in Argentina. Whoever did that was on spice, because he's about 3 foot taller than Diego Maradona was. The tall, gangly teenager would run riot for Chelsea at youth level and reserve level. He then scored 2 goals in pre-season ahead of the 08-09 campaign, and with that, they would give him the prestige number 9 shirt. Is that it, boys? Is that fucking it? Is that all you've got to do? All you've got to do is be more of a goal threat than Khalid Boularus, and you're getting the shirt. I'll be honest, lads, I've just accidentally pulled out my earring, so if you notice that that's gone. He made 8 substitute appearances, was an unused sub in the FA Cup final, and got 1 assist in total before getting loaned out to Blackburn and then sold to Wigan. To me, the only explanation is the kit man meant to give him an under-23 shirt and fucked it. Honestly, if he went on a night out next Saturday and went into the toilet with a suspicious white substance, he would probably be closer to Diego Maradona's legacy. Now though, time for our next Chelsea number 9. In 2011, Chelsea smashed the British transfer record by signing Fernando Torres from Liverpool for £50 million. It would turn out to be a tale of sensational highs but more frequent lows. Here were Chelsea fans realising their new number 9 was someone they'd actually heard of versus seeing that it was Fernando Torres taking it. Because after scoring consistently at Atletico Madrid, then netting 81 in 142 for Liverpool in a lethal partnership with Steven Gerrard, Torres under the guidance of Roy Hodgson was not the same animal and had clearly lost a lot of confidence. His debut in a blue shirt would come against none other than Liverpool, a side that already knows him basically inside and out, and it showed. Chelsea lost 1-0 and Fernando struggled again. I mentioned confidence before because it came abundantly obvious that Fernando Torres was someone that thrived off that and pretty much that alone. As soon as it was gone, you could see his form drop off dramatically, but I'm sure it would be fine, you know, in game 2. Or game 3. Maybe game 4 would be, or game 5. Definitely game 6. At the very least, game 7. On April 23rd, 3 months after his January signing and 16 games later,
Fernando Torres has broken his duck at last. A first goal for Chelsea.
That goal against West Ham would be his only one for the season in 18. Season 2 now, and it can't get any worse, realistically.
Torres must score again. Oh no!
Yeah, it got worse. The worst part is he actually started the game quite brightly. Got the only goal in Chelsea's 3-1 loss against United here. Next up though, when he scores again against Swansea, before getting sent off and being suspended for 3 matches. This was the thing, listen, for El Nino, look, it felt like he was just finding that form or finding that goal to give him that confidence, and then he'd be grounded again. His next goal would come in March. 6 months later. The things that you can do in 6 months. A company could build an entire block of flats. You could learn an entire language. You could go through most of your pregnancy. Honestly, maybe Fernando was pregnant, because this was not the El Nino of old. But for all of Fernando's struggles personally, and Chelsea were on their way to a Champions League fairy tale, producing an incredible 4-1 comeback against Napoli in the knockouts. Then, down to 10 and 2 goals down to Barcelona, Ramirez gave the Blues some hope. Barca threw the kitchen sink at Chelsea, needing a goal late on against the side down to 10. Even the great Lionel Messi cracked the crossbar from a penalty and cracked under pressure. But late on, and with Barcelona pressing everyone forward, one man who didn't break under the pressure was Fernando Torres.
It's Torres to give Chelsea a place in the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
The Spaniard had guaranteed Roberto Di Matteo and his side a place in a Champions League final and a chance to win Europe's greatest club prize for the first time in their history. He would have hoped to start the final, but instead was benched. But with Bayern taking the lead, he was called upon from the substitutes. He won his side a late corner, and the rest is history. Fernando Torres was a Champions League winner. At a similar time, and he even grabbed himself some goals in the league with a hat-trick against QPR. That form would continue into 2012-13, with goals against Reading, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Norwich. Then he was sent off for diving against United and getting a second yellow. Fernando, please. He ended his next goal drought that year in November, but did excel on the European stage again, this time in the Europa League, and even scored in the final against Benfica to help his side win that competition too. 13-14 was make or break for Fernando. He needed to show some kind of consistency, but instead delivered 5 goals in 28 in the Premier League, bringing an average at best spell at the club to an end. And so Chelsea would follow up an ex-Atletico Madrid striker coming off the back of disappointing form with an ex-Atletico Madrid striker coming off the back of disappointing form.
Well, you just knew that was going to happen.
This would prove to be one of the worst of the lot. On 170 grand a week, Falcao came with a big reputation. He scored 41 goals in 51 for Porto, 70 in 91 at Atletico, and 12 in 20 at Monaco. The problem was they just come off the back of an extremely disappointing loan spell at Manchester United and didn't seem to have the same level of fitness that he did before. It started okay with a goal and a loss against Crystal Palace, but that was his only league goal. He would play 10 times and just continually injured himself. He cost the club £800,000 per shot and 57 grand per touch of the ball. He was dropped from their Champions League squad halfway through the season, and not much was seen of him after that. Next up, the Spanish meme himself, Alvaro Morata. The 13th Chelsea number 9 of the Premier League era was just guaranteed to be one of the worst. It's an unlucky number for some, and it proved to be pretty unlucky for Alvaro. Now, I've always thought that this man's transfer fees were a pyramid scheme in their own right. How he consistently gets sold for this much money, I don't know, but Chelsea bought him for 60 million euros. This came after 15 goals in 64 at Juventus. 60 mil in this financial climate.
What have we done to the world? Look what we've done.
Now, the Spaniard was coming in just after the Diego Costa era, and he never really looked like he was going to fill Diego's boots. It didn't start off great, missing a penalty in a shootout for the Community Shield that season against Arsenal. But he did grab a goal and assist on his Premier League debut, and even grabbed a hat-trick in September against Stoke. That might sound great, and honestly, it's better than about 60% of the people we've heard so far. But the story of Alvaro Morata and what he would always be remembered for is his misses. It's all well and good scoring a hat-trick, but if you need 28 shots to do it, then it's not as useful. So many times he would run through on goal and either strike the ball directly at the goalkeeper or wide or over the bar. Missed compilations were born because of this man. That would culminate in 3 absolutely massive chances getting missed against Arsenal in the winter. And even though he had great movement, it was never rewarded on a Chelsea perspective because he just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. He'd scored 15 goals in all competitions, but even he seemed to realize the number 9 shirt was cursed going into 2018-19 because he actually changed kit number, but with similar results. I don't even think that's the curse. I think that's just Morata. He'd then go out on loan to Atletico Madrid and join them permanently for £38 million. What the fuck is going on? Another Chelsea number 9 was needed. Step forward, Gonzalo Higuain. Argentina's 6th all-time greatest scorer, quite literally scored wherever and whenever. Over 100 goals for Real, hero status at Napoli. Gonzalo Higuain seemed to be a steal, grabbing him on loan then with an option to buy. He should have been the one to break the curse on paper, because once again he wasn't a striker in the prime of his career. He was well into his 30s by this point and realistically had been signed because they hoped to rekindle some kind of partnership that he had with their then manager Maurizio Sarri. The reality is there were high concerns over his fitness levels once again and his ability to adapt to the fast pace of the Premier League. He grabbed 5 goals in 18 in a 6-month loan spell, 2 of which were against Huddersfield, so they don't even count. And it sounds awful, but honestly, he just wasn't fit at all. So Chelsea have now gone through a run of high-profile strikers, none of which have worked. What next, I hear you cry? After receiving a transfer embargo for a breach of FIFA youth players regulations, ironically, it would be a youngster at Chelsea who would get a chance. Tammy Abraham, who's actually called Kevin,
who the fuck is that guy?
Was born in Camberwell and joined Chelsea at under 8 level. He rose through the youth teams, winning the UEFA Youth League and Youth FA Cup with Chelsea in 2015 and 16. After a prolific loan spell at Bristol City and one a little bit more underwhelming one at Swansea, he would then help Aston Villa to promotion to the Premier League via the playoffs, scoring 25 goals across the championship campaign. The timing of Chelsea's embargo couldn't have been better for Tammy. Himself, Fikayo Tomori and Mason Mount were thrust into the limelight, and all of them shone under Frank Lampard. Can't lie, Abraham looks like he's gonna be a good player. Tammy, do you get it? Because to me, he's a good... No, but genuinely, Chelsea, please take me back. He'd win a penalty against Liverpool in the UEFA Super Cup, then score his first goals for Chelsea with a brace against Norwich. A month later, and he'd become the club's youngest hat-trick scorer versus Wolves in a 5-2 win. He'd hit 3 goals in the Champions League that season and 18 in total across all comps. Finally, a good season for a Chelsea number 9. Don't get it twisted, that's only 3 more than Morata, I hear it. But this was a young, inexperienced Chelsea side that wasn't expected to do as much as the one that Morata was in. But into 2020 and 21, Chelsea can sign players again, and they do so at great lengths. Hakim Ziyech, Kai Havertz and Timo Werner all join, combined with persistent injury problems for Tammy in the second half of the season, and he just wouldn't get the same game time. Only playing on 22 occasions, with some being substitute appearances. With Thomas Tuchel now in charge, and it seemed like he wasn't in favour with the German, he wouldn't even make a 12-man bench for the Champions League final. And with Romelu Lukaku then joining at the start of the next season, his days were numbered. He signed for Roma for £34 million, where he's become a fan favourite. And so honestly ended one of the few semi-success stories of this video so far. Step forward, the man I just mentioned, Romelu Lukaku. Born in Antwerp, in Compton.
This shit is wicked on these mean streets. None of my friends speak. We all trying to win.
Romelu was born to Congolese parents, one of which, Roger Lukaku, his dad, was capped for Zaire at international level. Now, if you want a full video on Romelu Lukaku, then let me know down in the comments section. This is actually an extremely interesting story, just a little bit too long for this video. So let's start from the Manchester United move. Yeah, no, it was a complete disaster, boys. The club was in turmoil, he didn't fit the system, he had his Timberlands on, and the things that made him so sharp at Everton seemed to have evaded him when he went over to United. And I think the less said about the move, the better. Because this isn't a video about United number 9s. But upon leaving United, he would rejuvenate himself, going over to Serie A with Inter. He'd immediately make an impact and find his Timberland-wearing feet. He formed an amazing partnership with Argentinian striker Lautaro Martinez and matched the R9's goal-scoring record of 1998 with 34 goals in all competitions. But the 2021 season would be even sweeter, as he helped Inter to a Serie A title, scoring 24 goals in 36 to end Juventus dominance. And that would lead to the Chelsea move. 10 years on after signing for the Blues originally, and he is now their main man, after a £97.5 million fee. And it started well, scoring 15 minutes into his second debut against Arsenal and retiring Pablo Mari. He'd score a brace against Aston Villa and score in Europe a few days later. And then it started to go wrong, with a combination of an injury in October that kept him out for a month, combined with poor form, and he went 3 months without a goal. This all boiled to a head in December, where he went public. In an interview with Sky Italia, he said that Thomas Tuchel had changed Chelsea's system and it was no longer suited to the big Belgian. On top of that, he claimed that he was unhappy at the club and said that he could see himself back at Inter in the near future. Suddenly, he's Chelsea public enemy number 1 amongst fans. He apologised, but his confidence and the confidence in him was gone. His form didn't seem to recover. He only touched the ball 7 times in one game against Crystal Palace, was missing chance after chance, including some sitters, and found himself benched for a lot of April. ESPN voted him as the worst Premier League signing of the season, and the writing was on the wall as he returned back to Inter on loan. Absolute robbery from the Italians. So what next? One last dance for a Chelsea number 9 to go and sign a 33-year-old striker who was terrible at the end of his spell at Arsenal.
When is it gonna end?
Now, I'm sure you all know all about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. I don't need to go through his career. But the once prolific former Arsenal captain had been exiled to Barcelona and La Liga after a disappointing spell at the Gunners and a fallout with their manager Mikel Arteta. He'd actually gone over there and rejuvenated his form, grabbing 20 goals in 38 for the Catalan side in the league, and also topping that off with a sensational performance against Real Madrid in El Clasico, where they won 4-0. He returned to the Premier League and signed for Chelsea in September for €12 million, and he scored his first goal on his debut against Palace. Like so many others in this video, it seemed like it had started so well for the Gabonese forward. The slight issue is, as I'm recording this video, that's the only goal he scored in the Prem so far. To put it mildly, he and Chelsea have been absolutely useless. He was brought in to try and link up with Thomas Tuchel, who then left about 3 days later. He was great at Barcelona, but in a side that's so defensive right now under Graham Potter, he doesn't even have a chance really to thrive at all. And already it looks like he's going to be heading out of the exit door at Stamford Bridge, and you guessed it, back to where he just come from, like Lukaku. So what do we make of all of this? Chelsea as such a successful side over the last 20 years, but seemingly a dumping ground for any striker that's brave enough to wear the number 9. I think ultimately some of it comes down to the lack of identity that Chelsea have, because they churn through managers and tactical approaches so frequently. I mean, how as a striker can you really settle down unless you're super adaptable and play under 4 managers in the space of like 6 years? But honestly, on top of the lack of patience and an increase in pressure, it's just the fact that recruitment has been poor. Their desire to go after big names only is really their downfall a lot of the time, because you end up with your Falcaos and Higuains, who are big names on the face of it, but are only being sold by their clubs because they're clearly not fit or not good enough anymore. If they'd signed strikers more intelligently during this period, even if it wasn't someone with a high profile or a high reputation, the chances are they would have found someone that would have matched their manager's actual tactical approach instead of just going for the name alone. I think it really tells a story that one of their only successful number 9s during this period was a youth academy graduate that didn't have a big name beforehand. But what do you make of it? What are the reasons why Chelsea can't just settle down on a good number 9? And who is the best and worst out of the players that I talked about today? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to slap a like on it. I would really appreciate it, because this one's taken a long time to research, a long time to record, and probably a long time to edit. And if you want to see more of these sorts of videos, then again, feel free to slap a like. It helps out with the algorithm. You can also follow me on social media. It is at officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.